Good day everyone, especially Ma'am Kim J. C. Dutelius. Good day ma'am. By the way, my name is Marchons Y. Pashol from BSed English 1A. So in this video presentation, I am going to discuss the 10 elements of painting. But I will only introduce 5 elements because the rest will be discussed by my co-worker on the topic of drawing. But before that, I am going to introduce first the learning objectives for today's discussion. So the learning objectives for today's discussion is we are going to identify what are the different elements of painting. The second one is we are going to describe the characteristics and function of each element. And lastly, we are going to analyze how these elements are used together in a painting to create meaning and effect. So what are the elements of painting, by the way? But before that, I am going to introduce first the learning objectives for today's discussion. So the learning objectives for today's discussion is we are going to identify what are the different elements of painting. The second one is we are going to describe the characteristics and function of each element. And lastly, we are going to analyze how these elements are used together in a painting to create meaning and effect. So what are the elements of painting, by the way? So the elements of painting are the basic components or building blocks of a painting. But before that, I am going to introduce first the learning objectives for today's discussion. So the learning objectives for today's discussion is we are going to identify what are the different elements of painting. The second one is we are going to describe the characteristics and function of each element. And lastly, we are going to analyze how these elements are used together in a painting to create meaning and effect. So what are the elements of painting, by the way? So the elements of painting are the basic components or building blocks of a painting. In Western art, they are generally considered to be color, tone. Cool colors conversely can evoke feelings of peace, sadness, or even coldness. So the interplay of warm and cool colors within a painting can create visual tension and interest. So we have here an example of a painting. So we have here the painting of Vincent van Gogh, the Sunflower. So think of this vibrant yellow and orange in Van Gogh's Sunflowers painting. So this evoke warmth and joy. Conversely, a painting dominated by blue and greens might convey calmness or melancholy. So for you, how does this artwork make you feel? Is it make you feel happy? Is it make you feel nervous? Is it make you feel calm? And what about the artwork make you feel this way? So the second element of painting is lines. So line is an important element at the disposal of every artist. Through the lines of a painting or sculpture, the artist can make us know what the work is about. He uses lines to represent figures and form. So lines are fundamental to the structure and visual flow of a painting. So the type of line used, like straight, curved, or diagonal, and etc., can convey different emotions or meanings. Thick lines can be bold and assertive, thin lines delicate and subtle. The direction of the line is also influence the viewer's experience. Vertical messages strength and stability, while horizontal lines can convey calmness or rest. So here is the different types of lines. Look carefully at these lines. What emotion can you associate with them? Now on the third element of painting, which is the tone. So tone and value are used interchangeably in painting. It is essentially how light or dark a paint is when you strip away the color. So understanding how to use it can greatly affect the way your art is perceived. So every color of a paint has almost endless variety of tones available to it. You can mix it with mediums and neutrals paint to adjust its tone however you like. So some paintings have a very limited range of tones, while others include stark contrast in tones. At its most basic, tone can be best seen in grayscale. So black is the darkest value and white is the brightest. So a well-rounded painting often has both of this, with highlights and shadows adding to the overall effect of the piece. So in short, tone refers to the lightness or darkness of a color, independent of its hue. So the range of tones from light to dark creates depth and dimension in a painting. Here an example of a painting. So a classical still life painting like Mani by Giorgio Morandi often employs a limited tonal range, focusing on subtle gradations of light and shadows to model form and create a sense of quiet contemplation. So the fourth element of painting is shapes. So in every piece of artwork includes the elements of shape which ties into line and space. In essence, a shape is an enclosed area that is made when lines meet. When the shape takes on a third dimension, as in sculpture or some mixed media, we then also have a form. Artists often train themselves to see the shapes in everything. By breaking down the basic shapes of a subject, it creates an accurate representation of it in paintings and drawings. So additionally, shapes may be either geometric or organic. So the former are the triangles, squares, and circles we're all familiar with. So the latter are those shapes that are not well defined or those found in nature. So the most perfect example of this kind of painting is the abstract paintings or the abstract art. So we have here an example of an abstract art by Piet Mondrian's. So Piet Mondrian's abstract paintings such as the composition 2 in red, blue, and yellow are built entirely from simple geometric shapes, creating a sense of balance and order. And lastly on my topic of elements of painting is the space. So space or volume is another crucial element in any art. It can be used to create great effect in paintings. When talking about space in art, we think of the balance between positive and negative space. So the positive space is the subject itself, while the negative space is the area of a painting around it. So artists can play with the balance between these two spaces to further influence how viewers interpret their work. So for example, a landscape with a smaller tree and horizon, which is the positive space that allows the sky or the negative space to take up most of the canvas, can make a very powerful statement. Likewise, painting a portrait in which the subject or the positive looks in the direction of the negative space can be just as intriguing as it's when they were looking straight at the viewer. So we have here an example of a painting that shows space. So example here is the landscape painting of Claudette Monet, the poplars on the bank of the Epte. So in a landscape painting of Claudette Monet, a small tree in the foreground or the positive space against a vast expanse of sky or the negative space can create a feeling of scale and isolation. So Claudette Monet has this so many kind of paintings, so you can uh, see or you can search it on the internet. So that's all for my video presentation. I hope you learned something, and thank you. Thank you for listening.